Welcome back to Finding the Good. On today's episode, I have Philipa joining me. So excited to have you on. We actually share a mutual friend, Miss Jamie Lynn, who highly recommended that she be on Finding the Good. So shout out to JL for fostering community and bringing people together. Again, so excited to have you on. How are you?
I am very honored to be here. Thank you, Brianna.
Yeah. So when Philippa she emailed me what she was sharing today. I was just so blown away by her story, and so I'm excited to hear it for the first time with everyone else. And so before we jump into it, why don't you just go ahead and share a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a mom. I've been married for 14 years to the
That's
love of my
amazing.
life. I know. I I've I've always loved Jesus and grew up in a Christian home. I'm a writer. I write screenplays and books, and I absolutely love creating with the Lord and bringing to light His stories and characters and showing how good our God is. I have a film that was nominated for a Dove Award and another feature film that has been screened all across the US to fight trafficking and bring to light that issue and to also bring funds to different anti-trafficking organizations. So,
Yeah, I love that so much. And a little later, I'm going to ask you all about that because that's just
yeah.
an issue right now that I've just been really passionate about and wanting to learn more about. So, definitely going to chat about that. But like I said, so Philippa is sharing today about her track career. And so, 14 years ago, back in the day, she
Yes.
was this talented athlete, and maybe she still is. I would be so curious to know if you still run because running's never been my favorite thing. But as she excelled in the sport, she was exposed to some abuse, which led into some other negative things. And so praise God that He delivered you from that. But my first question is, how did you get started in track?
So this does feel like another world, and I love it now that I can look back and
Yeah.
see the different parts of my life. Um, Track was something I grew up with. My parents met at a modeling job, actually, and my father was a full scholarship football athlete in college. So growing up, I was the oldest of three. We had to do modeling and acting, and we had to run track, and I was good at it.
Hmm.
Competitively, I was on I was in the top three every year from when I was 9 years
Wow.
old.
Hmm.
So um, I was I was good at it, but I'm not naturally a competitive person.
Yeah. Yeah. Same
I'm
here.
actually I so I'm naturally a sensitive, intellectual creative,
Hmm.
and because I was very good at it, and I was a firstborn people pleaser,
Hmm.
um, I I worked really hard at track, but it was kind of killing me inside
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
competitive sport. Where and I was a really sad, sensitive child growing up, and I remember, I would cry myself to sleep
Hmm.
often as a kid, and I felt so alone, and I just really wanted a friend. I was homeschooled, um, and did really well competitively, but I always had this thing too where the boys were afraid of me because I
Hmm.
could beat them up.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I just did running. I
Yeah.
did the heptathlon,
Oh, wow.
which is which was 100-meter hurdles, long jump, shot put, 200-meter dash, um, high jump, javelin, and 800 meters. So javelin and shot put were some of my better events, believe it or not.
Mm. Mhm.
And yeah, so I was really competitive, and it was always a goal to go to the Olympics, and it was a
Mhm.
goal to get a scholarship to college. So I worked really, really hard, and I figured out how to perform and
Mm.
how to kind of pretend and hide because I think and I learned there's a lot of good things I learned,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of things that got missed, um, for sure. So when I wanted a friend, for instance, I got put in competitive environments where God gave me some amazing friends, but then we were in track together and we were
Mm,
pitted against each other.
mm,
And it's like, oh, like I didn't, that is not what I needed. I did not need that kind of environment. I needed a friend.
mhm,
And I learned later in life that there was a pattern in my life where I would be in situations where someone would be put against me consistently. And it's good to have training partners. Like iron sharpens iron. We need
mhm,
people in our lives to train with and make us better. But that competitive environment really wasn't good for me. And when I really needed a friend, I was pitted against people and they were praised and exhorted and like it definitely felt like they were getting more attention and more.
mm,
And so while that was going on, I was just it just really hurt and ate at me. It was not what I needed. And I know some people thrive really well in that domineering military type of like just yell at me, get in my face. My husband's
mhm.
like that. I'm like, oh, let me go cry over here
Yeah, I know.
because I'm the
Yeah.
I'm I'm the sensitive intellectual creative, and that was really kind of ignored because I was good at this.
Mhm.
Um, I was so good that at 16, I was ranked sixth in the nation.
That's
And so
amazing.
I got a lot of scholarship offers. But at that same time, I was clinically depressed, and I had eating disorders, exercise anorexia, and I was binge eating. I could never throw up. I don't like throwing up, even when I ran so hard. I couldn't do it. But it's interesting coming from the modeling world and
Mhm,
track. Sports was where that hit me the most, where I had pressure to be a certain weight, to look a certain way. I wasn't as thin as this girl that they pitted me against. And it was like her life mission to beat me. And I'm
mm,
like, God, can't you? Like, there's got to be more to life.
mhm.
So I got, yeah, I did get the scholarship.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you when you got the scholarship, because you said, running, in track for college was a goal. So was it like, yes,
Yeah.
I did it, but then also just like this bittersweet because you're like, okay, well, here we go again. I have to do it for like, 4 more years.
Yeah. So, yeah, I realized that, yeah, it was really hard when I got the scholarship. I was so burnt out at that point. And it's like sometimes when you have a dream or a goal and you hit it, it's like this emptiness sets in.
Mhm,
And I never had thought of what happens after that. I mean, there was this, and I can look back now and go, no, it was there. There were things. But at the time it was like I hit it and it just this emptiness because I didn't really sit with the Lord and go, why am I here? Like,
mhm.
what did you create me to do? And I was dying inside in this competitive environment. And there was, yeah, there was a time where this coach just yelled at me in front of everybody in the group. And he basically said, why can't you do it like her?
Mm,
Just repeated it kind of over and over again, and nobody stood up for me. Nobody did anything, and that was just like the straw that broke the camel's back for me um, with that coach, because it was a consistent, just kind of tearing down between the weight issues and
mhm. Yeah, and so
the
is
the
that
other
is
girl.
that is that where the abuse began was in college?
So that was what I dealt with one coach, and by the time I was done with that, I was really kind of done with the sport, and it got to the point where I had a real hard time staying healthy.
Mhm,
So in college, I'm training and I get hurt pretty quickly. Um, the thing about college athletics is that um, you do get you might have a scholarship, but the team kind of owns you and you need to
mm,
score points for them. So there's a
mhm,
ton of pressure. in that. But I got the goal. I got the scholarship.
Mhm.
Don't know why I'm there. Don't know what I'm doing there. But this coach wasn't an angry, yelling kind of person. He was older and he seemed real nice. But I got hurt and I couldn't perform,
Mm.
and he didn't believe me, basically.
Wow.
um, so he sent this threatening letter home to my parents where he never confronted me head on or talked to me about anything. But he sent this threatening letter home to my parents. Um, just felt it was a defamation of character, just all over it.
Mhm.
Going through things that just weren't true and attacking my character and saying I needed to see, like see psychiatrists and things like that instead of medical professionals to help me.
Mhm.
Because I was doing everything they wanted, but I wouldn't take their steroid shot.
Mhm.
And the thing about a steroid shot is that it doesn't fix your injury. And this is a back injury, so it affects everything in my competitive world at the time. So they wanted me to take a steroid shot, which just masks the pain. It doesn't
Yeah.
actually fix anything. So I would, in essence, if I took the steroid shot, I would keep competing on it, and make my back worse.
Yeah.
So he sends his letter home, and I'm just bawling with my parents because they sent it to them, and I'm home when I get it, and just this was everything I worked for, and I really am trying the best I can to compete and do this. So my mother sends me to another specialist outside of the school program. They take x-rays and they're like, no, you're legitimately hurt and you shouldn't be competing. We have to rehab this. The school sends me to get x-rays as well. And they're like, yeah, you're legitimately hurt and you can't
Mhm.
compete right now. So I find out later that this coach had done the same thing to several other scholarship athletes on the team. So I wasn't, the
The
one
only
only
one.
one
Yeah.
targeted. This was something he used on the kids that were competing for him. But I remember there was a guy few years older than me. He was a hammer thrower and he was really good, nationally ranked, and he had taken the shots. And I had another girl who was also really good at high jump, a few years older, and she had taken the steroid shots. But the hammer thrower guy, he's like, I'm worried I'm not going to be able to bounce my kid on my knee when I get older.
Mm.
And I'm just like, this is so not worth it. I mean, I'm worth it to me. So I didn't do it. And, this coach kind of had it out for me because of that.
Mhm.
But I couldn't compete. I couldn't get healthy the whole time. I think I'm very, I very much believe that what we think affects
Oh, yeah.
everything around us. So I didn't hit this earlier, but I had a pattern in my life of people getting set up against me. And I realized later, as I went through a lot of counseling in my 20s, and I'm very thankful for spiritual deliverance
Mhm.
counseling. And they helped me see that I had a belief system, that the common denominator in these situations was me and what I
Mhm.
believed.
Mhm.
And they're like, essentially, you are pulling this out of people. I'm like, oh my gosh, let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
Um, so I had been pulling that out of people, and my stress level because of this stuff was so bad, especially in college, that I could not get physically healthy. Like when I was a child, I would get so stressed and upset that it manifested in hives, for instance.
Mm.
But when I was older, in college, I couldn't get healthy. I was sick. I had mono, I had the back injury, I had foot injuries, I had sinus and eye infections for like months and the whole year. It's like I was so beat down
Yeah.
that I physically couldn't get healthy.
And during that time, because you said you grew up knowing the Lord,
Mhm.
what was your relationship with the Lord during that time, like going through all that stress and then it manifesting like into other things?
um, I there's definitely I think everybody has ways they try and control their issues. I
Mhm.
know food was one for me. I was very uh, straight edge was the word that we used at the time. I didn't really drink. I wasn't going to drink. I did, you know, I tried to fill the void in other ways, but nothing that was lasting or temporary. Like I just stayed up late. I completely flipped from this introverted bookworm into I'm going to go out and meet all these people and be their best friend and
Mhm.
dance. And I was always the DD, of course, but it was also just kind of wearing me out because
Mhm.
I wasn't sleeping. But there's ways to try and manage that. But I went to as many Christian groups as I possibly could my sophomore year when this was all kind of coming to a crescendo for me with track. Because but I was running from something I couldn't get out of myself.
Mhm.
And I've always had a prayer like, Lord, I want to fulfill your will no matter what it is.
Mhm.
But I had no idea who I was, and I had no idea how to get out of this thing. And it was my identity. I
Yeah.
did not know who I was apart from track, which is so interesting now, 14 years looking back on it. I'm
It's a
not that
different
girl. And
world.
people,
Yeah.
yeah, and people who know me have no idea that, oh, you were really, really good, really like that was a long time ago. Which is great now, but God truly did save me through all of that. I was very depressed. There were times I was suicidal
Mm.
for sure, but I loved God, and that was I always wanted to please Him and serve Him. And I do believe that when we can't get out of situations ourselves, God kind of slams the door on like,
Oh,
um,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, so, what was the turning point for you during that time, and when did God,
Mm.
call you out of track? I'm assuming you said sophomore year?
Yeah, so I couldn't get healthy and I wasn't scoring points for the team. So got to the point where the track coach is like, all right, well, I'm going to try and get you on a medical scholarship. So we won't take away your scholarship, but you're going to be on the team with this guy who sends this threatening defamation
Mm.
of character letter to me. And it was just a really awful environment. Too. So I was like, I can't do this.
Mhm.
I can't do this. And it's interesting that at the same time, this is when I met my husband. And my mom, he has a sports medicine degree and he played professional football.
Mhm.
So my mother is like, she knew him. He also did modeling and acting. So he's from my world.
Yeah.
He knew all my stuff that I was dealing with that a lot of people, didn't know, or they're in one side of it, not, whatever. So she talks to him and she's like, can you talk to my daughter? I don't know what to do for her. Cause I was out of state and I'm like, I'm not going to talk to some strange man. And she gives him my number anyway, because that's my mom.
Mhm.
And I get mad at her because he calls me, but she's like, just talk to him. So I'm on the phone with him and we're talking for 40 minutes and I'm just bawling.
Mm.
And I never cried in front of people. It was especially from the modeling the modeling pageant perspective of where I came from. You put on a happy face. It was
Mm.
not okay to show how you were feeling. Nobody cares if you're upset that you didn't win the medal or you're hurt. Nobody cares. You have to smile. You have to look. It's also a Southern thing too, I guess.
Yeah.
But so I'm bawling, and my roommates are like, "What is going on?" Because that's really unusual. Um, and we talked about track, and we talked about pressure, and we talked about schools, and he was the first person in my life that I recall asking, "What do you want to do?" And I
Mm.
realized I had no idea.
Yeah.
um, I knew it wasn't track because that was like it was killing me inside. but I didn't know who I was apart from that. And I never had given myself permission and even like um, valued myself enough to ask, like, God,
Mhm.
why am I here? It's like I was putting myself on the altar for everybody else's, what they wanted me to do, kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's kind of where I was. So that began a process of, I realized pretty quickly I can't stay in this environment. And God was really kind, where He sent me several different dreams where I knew I'd be leaving. And it wasn't my fault or anything I did, but He was birthing something else inside of me, calling me somewhere else. And so that was very kind.
Yeah, so when you got those dreams and you felt like, this season was coming to a close,
Mhm.
again, did it feel bittersweet just because you're like, "Man, this is all I've known for all these years, like, Lord, this is kinda
Yeah.
scary. Where are you taking me next?"
It was terrifying. And you know, and the thing about the coaches is they're authority figures. Like, so it hurt so much coming from these authority figures that you respect, that you look up to, that you're trying
Mhm,
to perform and please. We have to be really careful when we're in those positions of authorities, what we speak and how we act around the people that are under us.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, it felt like it was like a death to self.
Yeah.
Really, I died to so many of the dreams I thought I had, um, and other people's expectations. I gave up a lot. It felt like a death. It felt like
Mm.
giving up a lot of things. But in it, I found. I just started praying. I'm like, Lord, you know, why am I here? What do you have for me to do? Like, I just want to fulfill your will no matter what it is. That was my
Mhm.
prayer. And in that season, he gave it was the first time I heard an audible voice, and it was loud, and I was driving, and all he said was, um, help her finish it. And he showed me who it was. My mother had a friend, and she had asked me years ago to help her draw drawings for a screenplay,
Mhm.
because I was also artistic. And I'm like, okay, this is my mom's friend. I don't know what she's doing. So it was really scary and intimidating to ask, you know, somebody quite a bit older than you at the time, a lot of life experience. Hey, I felt like God told me to help you finish this. And she was so kind and gracious, that she's like, okay. um, and her father is a Hall of Fame songwriter. Like, she's awesome, and she was always kind to me. When I was growing up, she would encourage my singing. She'd encourage all of my artistic pursuits. And it's not that my parents didn't, it's just I got a lot more attention for track, which I also did really well.
Mhm.
So for 10 years, I'm writing with this woman, and I'm learning under her, and I'm taking other classes to learn writing too. And we wrote a lot of projects together. We're currently we just finished another project, we filmed, called Pieces, and we've been working on it for 12 years, and it's about,
Wow.
every piece matters, every piece of the puzzle. God, so it's about valuing yourself and valuing everyone around you, because we're all needed to in the puzzle of life. And it combats bullying and depression and a lot of my issues. And I wanted,
Yeah, yeah.
for people to see. But one of the other ones that we worked on is called I'm Not Ashamed, and it was nominated for a Dove Award for Best Christian Film. And it's it was really we did that 10 years later, after I was just following that one thing. And I think it's very kind of God to just He's shown me some big vision things,
Yeah.
but to just give me some little steps too. So as I was, you know, dying through the identity that I thought I had, He was like reminding me and breathing in me, no, this is who I created you to be. All those
Mm.
stories that I started in my journals and in my on my computer, and um, you know, my mother's friend speaking over me in creativity, and even my dreams, the whole I remembered later that the whole reason I was pursuing track was to actually get into entertainment and to do well in entertainment. And God's like, I don't need your plans.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I have my own way to
I
do
know what I'm
this.
doing.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was sweet of God to just remind me where I had been, where I felt like I was losing and dying to so much. They go, no, this is not any, like, I definitely learned a lot, and he trained me, and I broke a lot of things too, praise God. And it was so kind of him to walk me through these things, but
Mhm.
he had better things, and I had to
Yeah.
let go of that to get there.
Yeah, I love that. My grandmother told I was going through a rough season, and my grandmother told me, she's like, God will always restore the years that you might think you've lost, or the time you've lost. And so I
Yeah,
love how you reference it to like a grieving process, but then God just like
yeah,
revives these other things that are in
yeah.
you, and it's just such a beautiful transition. So looking back at that
Mm.
season when you were in track and going through some of those, hard things that you went through,
Mm.
how can you see the goodness of God from that season?
I always, even when I was crying at night, because it wasn't okay to cry in front of other people or be sad
Mhm.
in front of other people, through these different things, he was really he was there the whole time, and with me the whole time, and my friend, and he let me, make decisions that I probably shouldn't have made, and he was my support in that and with me to get me through these things. So, and I learned a lot that I needed to learn too, um, to be able to do what I'm doing now. So,
Mhm.
how to manage a lot of emotions
Yeah.
in situations that weren't very high stress for me.
Yeah. Well, just wrapping up, my last question for you is, you talked a lot about identity, finding your identity in track, and I think, for people who are not rooted and grounded their identity in Christ, it's so easy to gravitate to other things. A big one is what you do, your work.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a relationship, your spouse or whoever you're with.
Mhm.
And so, for anyone who's watching right now, what is some advice that you can share for, identity in the things that they do rather than God? Some advice you can share
Yeah.
for them.
That's such a good one. And our society, I come from a high performance family too, so
Hmm.
that that was hard. And there's nothing wrong with doing well and wanting to do things excellently. I do think that honors God, but I think we can put anything in front of God and it can become unhealthy
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Um, I think, yeah, knowing who you are, who God created you to be is really, really important. And if you don't have peace in that, I'm really sensitive. So if I'm feeling any fear or anxiety now, I know there's something off.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
got to get back to God, and he has peace. He has peace that passes all understanding. And I had to find that in the midst of these track situations, and God was definitely better than the food I was binging
Yeah.
or whatever I was doing. He has peace that passes all understanding, and that I think that's really important. And no matter what you're doing and where you're at, is finding that peace. He has it, and thankfulness, and it helps to see um, what he sees. And something God has given me too is you don't have to understand everything. You just have to obey. Is kind of what he's told me,
Hmm.
because that can stress me out when I don't understand everything and I don't see where it's
Yeah.
going. Um, but it gives me peace to know, like, he does, and I can trust him. And so I had to letting go of things is a form of trust too. So I was holding on to so much, trying to make it happen and be okay. And and I couldn't. So
Mhm.
letting it go, and giving it to him was really, really freeing and being okay. One of the things that I feel like God pressed on my spirit is do what you can, no less, no more, no less, no stress. And he's gonna take care of the rest. We just have to obey what he's called us to, and even if it's just that one step, just like
Yeah.
I got that one direction, and it was really intimidating, but I did it. And you just keep doing what he says and what he asks, and it's gonna be okay. But when you're not in step with what he's doing, I feel like I've learned that that's a really stressful place to be.
Mhm.
And so I'm a lot quicker to go, oh, this is not right. This is not where we're supposed to be. This is not what we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's really good. Just having an awareness of him and being in step with the spirit. I know that's something my husband has to constantly remind me of because I am just like I can be, a control freak sometimes. I love having a plan. I love knowing what we're doing, a month out and just wanting to see everything kind of like you said. And I can't control everything all the time. And so
no,
when you just give it to God, it just makes it that much easier.
yeah, and his plans are so much better than our plans. And I
Always,
think that's where
yeah.
we really do get ourselves in trouble. Like especially when God's spoken something or there's a word over us or we've seen something. And I equate it to the Israelites in the promised land.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like they had an expectation of
Yeah.
what this was going to
Yeah.
be, and they get there, and it's like, oh, wait, what? There's giants in the land. And he's like, that's okay. I got it.
Mhm.
I'm God. And they're freaking out. And so I just, that's always hit me is his plans are better than our plans. And he's faithful to every one of his promises.
Mhm.
It's probably not going to look like what we think it's supposed to look like or whatever, but we have to trust him and keep walking in that because he has got it.
Yeah, it's always so much better than what we dream up. You're like,
It
"Oh, I thought it
is,
was gonna go
right?
this way," but actually, God did this, and it's so
Yeah,
much better than than I would have thought. So, well,
it is.
yeah.
And yeah, so I'm so thankful that I did learn a lot, but
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that I was intentional with the Lord. I wish I would have done it earlier,
Yeah,
saved
yeah.
myself a lot of grief
Mhm.
and everybody around me because I know that was also hard for them too.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful that I put in the time and the effort, and it's never too late to do that either. I feel like
Mhm.
He wants us to draw near to Him, He wants to speak over us. He has plans and purposes for every person, and they're unique to them. That's why
Mhm.
your skills, your passions, your abilities are all different and unique, and we need that. It's
Yes.
very important that you show up where God's called you to show up.
I love
So,
that.
yeah.
Love it. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much for being on Finding the Good. I'm so glad that we finally got to meet and connect because I see
Likewise.
you all the time on social media. I'm following what you're up to. And so, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.